Excellencies, colleagues and representatives, it is my great honor to open the 5th summit of the International Crimea Platform, and I will be moderating. A record number of leaders and senior officials, 54 countries, 7 international organizations, every continent and region of the world. This shows not only support for Ukraine, but a strong support for the most important UN principle, territorial integrity of states. This is about principles. The United Nations is the right place. The General Assembly has taken 24 principled decisions on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity since 2014. Most importantly, this summit sends a powerful message of hope to Ukrainians in Crimea, to Crimean Tatars, to everyone who does not abandon hope that justice will be restored. This summit reaffirms the truth. Crimea is Ukraine. And I thank each of you for showing that Ukraine is not and will never be alone. We are stronger together, and together we stand for a just and lasting peace and for the Charter of the United Nations. Before we start, I kindly ask everyone to follow our timing of 2 minutes per speech. We want all of our speakers to be able to deliver their remarks. Your microphones will start blinking when the time is running up. And now I would like to invite you to watch a short video.
Leaders from around the world have gathered in New York to mark the 80th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations and to reaffirm their commitment to the fundamental principles of the UN Charter. All of these principles were blatantly violated by the Russian Federation in 2014 when it occupied part of Ukraine's territory, Crimea. In 2022, Russia used Crimea as a springboard for its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The occupying state began creating a new reality in Crimea. Militarization of the peninsula and environmental damage, destruction of cultural heritage, persecution of Ukrainian citizens, abduction and indoctrination of Ukrainian children, suppression of freedom of speech and religion. This is the grim reality faced by people living under Russian occupation. But this does not stop them from mounting daily resistance to the occupiers, demonstrating a clear stance. Crimea is Ukraine. Since 2014, the UN General Assembly has adopted more than 20 resolutions, documenting new facts of Russia's violations of international humanitarian and human rights law in the occupied Crimea. To strengthen the international response to the illegal occupation of Crimea, Ukraine launched the International Crimea Platform format. In 2021, the inaugural summit of the International Crimea Platform took place in Ukraine's capital. As part of the International Crimea Platform, 4 summits at the heads of state level, 3 parliamentary summits, and numerous expert forums have been convened to consolidate international actions towards the deoccupation of Crimea. Ukraine, together with the entire world, is working to secure the return of our people from occupation and unlawful captivity. Efforts are also focused on protecting the rights of Ukraine's indigenous peoples, including through the international recognition of the 1944 deportation of the Crimean Tatar people as an act of genocide. Today, Ukraine, together with its international partners, is working to restore a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace, a peace based on the principles of the UN Charter and international law. Such a peace will be the best way to honor the 80th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations.
Україна не торгує територіями, бо Україна не торгує людьми.
Before you is a New York Declaration. It brings together the key messages of the resolutions approved by the General Assembly. The declaration reaffirms our commitment to the UN Charter, and it upholds Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. We thank all those who have joined the New York Declaration, and it remains open for others to align with. And I now have the honor to invite His Excellency, Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, to take the floor and deliver his keynote address.
Thank you so much, Minister. Dear friends, dear leaders, and Mustafa, thanks so much. Happy to see all of you. Thank you for such big support. And really, it's very important, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you to this summit of our Crimean platform. And today, with over 60 participants, as Minister already said, this is really huge result. The summit is taking place for the first time on a global stage on the margins of the UN General Assembly. This is to show the global harm caused by Russia's occupation of Crimea, and also the harm caused by the world's powerful nations for not responding formally and in time to Russia's aggression in Crimea. It was that weak reaction that brought back Russia's addiction to war and rage. And it was in Crimea that Russia broke one of the basic rules of normal life among nations by illegally annexing our Ukrainian Crimea. It was Russia's actions in Crimea that showed many predators around the world how it can be so easy to take a piece of another state. And this is not just a piece of land, it is a piece of life. Ukraine is home to many peoples, and especially to the indigenous people of Crimea, Crimean Tatars, a people who can truly feel what home means only in Crimea. Russians have many places on their vast land to feel at home, but for them it is never enough. Even the largest territory in the world is not enough for them. And from Crimea, Russia returned to its old imperial habit to take what is precious to its neighbors. Dear friends, we have to remember what Crimea is. We must act so that Russia knows we remember, and we will not forgive. And we are fighting for international law and basic human justice and prevail. And I thank everyone who maintains and strengthens sanctions in response to the Russia's war. And it's important to coordinate sanctions fast, our steps with partners and their steps with each other. And we are taking action to prevent Russia from turning Crimea into one large military base. And we have to do this to protect the lives of our people. Our long-range drones are accurate. Our pressure on Russia logistics is producing results. And the Russian war machine is facing very serious difficulties. It's vital that the world keeps in mind the suffering of civilians whose lives Russia has destroyed in the occupied territories. And today, repression is the harshest in Crimea and other areas under Russian control for speaking the truth, for wanting freedom, even for faith. Crimean Tatars, Muslims are among the main targets of this repression. Imagine some Crimean prisoners have been deprived of their freedom since 2014, already 11 years. So Ukraine's main message is this: do not let war become part of the norm. Russia very much wants to make war the new normal, and this is exactly what we must resist, not allowing killings and Russian occupation to become something the world can simply turn a blind eye to. There must be no normalization of Russia's war or of Russia's brazenness to wage it. There must be no easing or lifting of sanctions on Russia while the war and occupation continue. And there must be no forgiveness for what Russia has done. Starting from 2014, the occupier must be held accountable for the occupation and for all the crimes of this war, a war in which only Russia is guilty. Thank you to everyone. Thank you who stands with Ukraine, to all the leaders and to the leader of Crimean Tatars. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini! Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really, we don't have limits in applauses. So in any case, we will continue. Thanks a lot, Mr. President, for your powerful speech and steadfast leadership. And now I invite Mr. Mustafa Dzhemilev, leader of the Crimean Tatar people, a steadfast voice for freedom and dignity, to address the summit. Mustafa Aga, запрошую вас до слова.
Ekselanslar, değerli beyler ve hanımefendiler. Dünyada bir inanç var. Eğer Birleşmiş Milletler Teşkilatı'nın kürsüsünden nasıl bir dilde konuşma yapılsa, demek o dil hiç zaman dünyada kaybolmayacak. Ben de şimdi UNESCO tarafından kaybolma tehlikesi altında olan diller listesine girsetilgen Kırım Tatar dilinde birkaç söz söylemek isteyeyim. Elbet Ukrayna devleti, Cumhurbaşkanı Zelensky bu dil kaybolmaması için elbet elinden geleni yapar. Ama yine de bu dil tehlike altındadır. Benim Kırım Tatarcadan İngilizceye çevirecek Amerikan Kırım Tatar Birliği'nin milli mücadele kuruluşun bir başkanı Mübeyin Altan olacak.
No, just a second.
Your Excellencies,
We need to hear you.
Have
and,
some technical
and
problems.
We don't see the translation.
Your Excellencies, esteemed ladies and gentlemen, there is a belief in the world
Started.
Started.
Yeah.
if a language was spoken at the United Nations tribune, then this language will never disappear, will not be lost. I will speak now in the Crimean Tatar language, a language which UNESCO included in its list of endangered languages, endangered of disappearing, despite the fact that Ukraine and President Zelensky's great efforts to preserve this language. My translator into English will be one of the patriarchs of the Crimean Tatar diaspora in the United States, Mübeyin Batu Altan.
İlk önce niyetleri Kırım Yarımadası'nı Rus işgalinden kurtarma yollarını aramak için teşkil edilgen Kırım Platformu 5. zirvesinin hep iştirakçılarını samimiyetle selamlamak isterim. Onlarca devletlerin rehberleri ve onların temsilcileri bir araya gelip de Kırım işgalini tanımadıklarını ve hiç zaman tanımayacaklarını ve bu toprakını işgalden kurtarmak için elinden geleni yapacakları bizim için, Ukrayna devleti için ve ayrıca Kırım Tatarlığı için çok önemlidir.
I sincerely thank the leaders and the representatives of the countries participating in the 5th summit of the Crimean Platform, whose main goal is to find ways to liberate Crimea from Russian occupation. The fact that dozens of countries around the world gathering together and firmly declaring that they do not and will never recognize the legality of the occupation of Crimea and will make every effort to liberate it is of great importance for Ukraine and especially its indigenous people.
Ben 1944 yılında halkın topyekun sömürülüğüne ve soykırımına uğratılan ve ardından 20. yüzyılın en acımasız rejimlerin birine karşı vatanlarına kayıtıp gelmek ve insan hakları için neredeyse yarım asır devir içerisinde güreşken Kırım Tatar neslinin az sayıda da hayatta kalan temsilcilerinden birisiyim.
I am one of the few surviving representatives of the generation of Crimean Tatars who survived the total mass deportation and genocide of their people in 1944 and then waged an almost half a century long struggle against one of the most brutal regimes of the 20th century for the right to return to their homeland and their human rights.
Büyük kıyımlıkları yenip bizler öz vatanımıza kayıtmaya, yıkılgan medeniyetimizi kaldırmaya, kıyıklemeye tek Gorbaçov'un perestroikası sonraki yıllarında ve Sovyetler Birliği dağıldıktan sonra ise artık Ukrayna devletinin yardımından başladık. Трансляция. Нема трансляции.
Yeah.
Could we check once again this translation?
Do you hear what? Do you hear us with translation? I'm sorry. My proposition is, we have, yes, please, Rustam, can you come? I think I found a way how to go quick. It's great that we have Crimean Tatars. Crimean Tatars in our government. I think it's helpful. Будь ласка, собі оцей мікрофон. Будь ласка.
Okay, okay.
Давай, будь ласка. Ти ж можеш паралельно перекладати по абзацам.
Все, да.
Мустафа.
Sistemde. Şimdi.
Burada tercüme edersin. Ben şimdi
Okay.
Into English.
Sure.
Ти не вмикнув мікрофон. Рустем.
Да, да.
Окей.
ben 1944 yılında halkın topyekun sürgününe ve soykırımına uğratılan ve ardından 20. yüzyılın en acımasız rejimine birine karşı vatanlarına kayıtıp gelmek ve insan hakları içinde de neredeyse yarım asırlık bir devir içerisinde güreşken Kırım Tatar halkının az sayıdaki daha hayatta kalan temsilcilerinden birisiyim.
I'm one of the few still surviving representative of the generation of Crimean Tatars who survived the total deportation of genocide of their people in 1944 and then waged an almost half-century struggle against one of the most brutal regimes of the 20th century for the right to return to their homeland and their human rights.
Büyük kıyınlıkları yenip bizler öz vatanımıza kayıtmaya,
Overcoming enormous difficulties, we began to return to our homeland and restore the remnants of our destroyed culture only in the last years of Gorbachev's perestroika and after the collapse of the
Overcoming
USSR.
enormous difficulties, we began to return to our homeland and restore the remnants of our destroyed culture only in the last years of Gorbachev's perestroika and after the collapse of the USSR, already with the support of the independent Ukrainian state.
Bu cereyan 2014 yılın senesi Şubat ayında bundan 70 yıl önce halkımıza karşı soykırım uygulanan devletin varisi yani Rusya
This process was interrupted in February 2014 by the invasion of the Crimea by troops of the state that is the successor of the state that committed genocide against the indigenous people of the peninsula.
Ukrayna'nın ana topraklarına doğru daha fazla ilerlemek maksadıyla Rusya Kırım Yarımadası'nı hızla bir askeri platforma çevirmeye başladı. Ve Rus mantığına göre bu bazanın teritoriyasında yalnız işgalcilere sadık insanlar yaşamaları gerek olduğu sebebinden büyük baskılara birinci olarak Tamır halkı, Kırım Tatarları
Russia began to rapidly transform the entire peninsula into a powerful military base with the clear
in
goal
February 2014 by the invasion of Crimea by troops of the state that is the successor of the state that committed genocide against the indigenous people of peninsula. Russia began to rapidly transform the entire peninsula into a powerful military base with a clear goal of further expansion into the mainland Ukraine. And since in accordance with Russian logic, only people loyal to the occupiers were supposed to live in the territory of this base. Then representatives of the indigenous people and ethnic Ukrainians were the first to be subjected to large-scale repressions.
Söz sırası işgalcilerin siyasi ve dini sebeplerle baskılarına ve cezalarına uğratılan Bu sırada kaçırılan ve öldürülen insanlar, tutuklanan, aramalar, soruşturmalar ve işkencelere uğratılan Kırım Tatarlarının sayısı nüfus oranlarına göre bütün Rusya'daki represyalara nispeten 52 kere ziyade olanı kaydetmek mümkündür.
It is enough to mention that the number of Crimean Tatars repressed for political or religious reasons, including kidnappings and murders, arbitrary arrests, searches, interrogations, torture, is proportional 52 times higher than the number of repressions in Russia as a whole.
Çeşit kaynaklara göre işgal başlandıktan bu güne kadar artık 50 bine yakın Kırım Tatarları, yani nüfusun tahminen %15'i ve 200 bine yakın etnik Ruslar Kırım'ı terk etmeye mecbur oldular. Bu zaman içerisinde ise Kırım'a göçürülen Rus vatandaşların sayısı artık 1 milyona adamdan ziyade.
According to various estimates, from the moment of occupation to the present, about 50,000 Crimean Tatars, about 15% of the entire population, and up to 200,000 ethnic Ukrainians have left Crimea. And the number of Russian citizens resettled in Crimea already exceeds 1 million people.
Kırım Tatarların öz vatanını terk etmesi devam etmektedir ve eğer Kırım işgalden kurtarılmasa yakın gelecekte o halkın bir millet olarak tamamıyla yeryüzünden yok olmasını beklemek mümkündür.
The process of displacing the indigenous people continues, and if Crimea is not liberated, then in the foreseeable future we can foresee that the complete disappearance of the Crimean Tatar people as an original ethnic group.
Yani tüm Ukrayna için Kırım'ın azat edilmesi birinci sırada devletin toprak bütünlüğünü sağlamak ve hafızlığını temin etmek meselesi olsa, Kırım Tatar halkı için bu bir millet olarak yeryüzünde kalmak veya tamamıyla yok olmak meselesidir.
Therefore, if for Ukraine in general the liberation of Crimea is primarily a question of restoring its territorial integrity and ensuring its security, then for the indigenous people of Crimea it is also a question of survival and further development or complete disappearance as an original nation.
Bugün Ukrayna saldırgan devlete karşı savaşta kendini, toprağını parçalamak, zalim işgalcilerin eline düşen milyonlarca vatandaşlarını kurtarmak için çok kan kaybetmektedir.
Today, Ukraine is bleeding, fighting off the aggressor and trying to liberate its occupied territories, to liberate millions of our fellow citizens who have fallen into the hands of cruel occupiers. We're grateful to all the countries in these difficult times for us to provide significant support and assistance to our country, clearly realizing that this war of Russia is not only against Ukraine, but also against the entire world's order, against civilization.
Bununla beraber sonki zamanlarda bizleri çok rahatsızlayan bir şey şu ki bazı bizlere müttefik olan devletlerde sözde gerçek siyasi yani real politik teorisinin taraftarları hakim olmaya başladı. Malum olduğu gibi bu teoriye göre her devlet yalnız kendi ekonomik ve diğer bir menfaatlarını düşünecek ve bu menfaatlar uğrunda ise ahlaki ve manevi prensipler, insan hakları ve uluslararası hukuk hesaba alınması şart değilmiş.
However, we are concerned that in some of our allied states, the adherents of the so-called theory of real politics have begun to prevail. That is a theory that for the economic or the other interests of their countries allows them to ignore moral and ethical principles, human rights and international law.
Bu konsepte göre saldırgan devletinin planlarına çok uygun olan nasıldır barış anlaşmasını teklif etmek ve bu anlaşmaya göre Kırım Yarımadası'nı ve birçok diğer işgal altında olan Ukrayna topraklarını Rus toprakları olarak tanımaya hazır olduklarını bildirmek de mümkünmüş.
One can put forward a certain peace plan that largely coincides with the plans of the aggressor and provides for a ceasefire due to the recognition of Crimea and some other occupied territories of Ukraine as territories of Russia.
Şimdi tahmin ediniz ki bu gibi barış anlaşmalar, planlar Kırım'da, diğer işgal altında olan, ayrıca Rus FSB'sinin zindanlarında olan ve büyük umutla Ukrayna devletine ve onun müttefiklerine bakıp duran vatandaşlarımız nasıl karşılayacak?
Now imagine what kind of impression such peace plans will make on our fellow citizens in Crimea and other occupied territories, especially those who are behind the dungeons of the FSB and look with the hope of their country and its allies.
Bunda da gayrı herkes farkında ki böyle barış yalnız daha kanlı savaş için kısa bir teneffüs olacak. Çünkü askeri güç kullanılması tehdidi altında imzalanan ve uluslararası hukukuna aykırı olan her türlü anlaşmalar geçersizdir.
In addition, it is absolutely clear to everyone that such a peace agreement will be a very short break before a new, even bloodier war, because any agreement signed under the threat of using military force and contradicting the norms of international law are legally null and void.
Yazık ki hep Putin'in rejimin tüm dünyasının onun gününde yaptığı cinayetlere rağmen bizim bazı müttefiklerimiz daha şunu anlamadılar. O kana susamış devletin, saldırgan devletin uluslararası hukuk kanununa, Birleşik Devletler'in teşkilatının temel prensiplerine aykırı olan tavizlerini vermekle, işgal ettiği diğer devletin topraklarına hediye etmekle onu susturmak mümkün değil. Ve bu böyle tavizler tüm dünya büyük tehlike yaratacaktır.
It is surprising that despite all the crimes of the Putin regime in the front of the whole world, some of our allies have not yet understood that appeasing of bloodthirsty aggressor through some territorial concessions to the detriment of the other countries and international law, to the detriment of the basic principles of the UN is impossible and is fraught with the grave consequences to all humanity.
Yeter ki 1930 yılını hatırlayın. Malum olduğu gibi o zaman Hitler'i memnun etmek için ve böylelikle barış sağlamak için Çekoslovakya'nın bazı toprakları
That this tactic is very reminiscent of the attempt to appease Hitler in 1938 by handing over part of the territory of Czechoslovakia to him, which resulted in World War
And
II,
that
at least
tactic
in
is
memory
very
of the
reminiscent
more
of the
than
attempt to
55
appease
million
Hitler
people
in
who died in that
1938
war.
by handing
Perhaps
over
such
part
mistakes
of the
should not
territory
be
of
repeated.
Czechoslovakia to him, which resulted in World War II, at least in memory of more than 55 million people who died in that war. Perhaps such mistakes should not be repeated.
Kırım Platforması'nın zirvesinin sonuç açıklamasının projesinde bildiğiniz gibi bu artık 11 yıldan fazla devam etken savaşın yalnız uluslararası hukukun esasında tarafların toprak bütünlüğü sağlanması şartla durdurmak
I hope that
mümkün olduğunu
representatives of all
kaydetmektedir.
countries will support the proposed text of the final declaration of the Fifth Crimean Summit, which provides for the end of this bloody war that has lasted more than 11 years under the conditions of compliance with the norms of international law and, first of all,
I hope
ensuring the
that
territorial integrity of
representatives
Ukraine. Thank you for your
of all
attention.
countries will support the proposed text of the final declaration of the Fifth Crimean Summit, which provides for the end of this bloody war that has lasted more than 11 years only under the conditions of compliance with the norms of international law, and first of all, ensuring the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Thank you very much for your attention.
Çok sahih olunuz Mustafa'a. Special event, special translations, and probably yesterday President Trump was right, absolutely right, criticizing